without even owning territory and having a nation? Why can't we, on the flip side, raise up people in cells all over this world that love Jesus, that are networked together through a way of communication, spiritual? Why can't we do that? Why don't we do that? And I'm telling you, by the grace of God, we will do that. But as Paul goes on to say, in verse 12, that is, that I may be encouraged together with you while among you, each of us by the other's faith. You know how encouraging it is for me to meet somebody that's been through something, who's lost it all, who's been separated for a season, or who feels like God's calling him to do something that's totally impossible. We immediately experience kinship and fellowship that's very real and very special. Well, Paul wanted to experience what they were doing and see it firsthand. And we want to see people like you that are doing the kinds of stuff that God has called us to do. And he goes, I do not want you to be unaware, brethren, that often I have planned to come to Rome, but I have been prevented. There's a lot of things we want to do that, frankly, we're prevented from doing, but we want to do them, which tells us we're in a war. The enemy does not want us to succeed, and he actually gets away with it. There are times when he can hinder us. That's why when Paul says in another place, he says, a door has been opened to me to preach the gospel, but there are many adversaries. I can tell you that feeling. I have felt so many open doors to preach the gospel to the next generation, young people in Pilot Mountain and people outside. We used to show hospitality to bands that would travel through, and some of these bands were not Christian. They were just young men, women traveling. We put them up at our cafe, and we were able to minister to them. I could feel the presence of God coming through me just so I could talk to them a little bit, build a relationship, speak into their life. We had bands that would come through. I can remember one, Faster, Faster. They had 2 songs downloaded, beautiful songs downloaded to them while they were staying overnight in our cafe. And they aren't even a Christian band, but they got beautiful music downloaded. That was encouraging to me. That was an open door. But the enemy eventually came in October. The Lord told us to shut it down. And it was a good thing. For the last year, I've been able to understand how good God was to my family, to shut us down, to take us out of the public eye, and to give us a season alone, to reconnect with each other, and for me to spend time with my little ones, especially my little sons. But it's a lot of work to be a father of 7 children. Each of them needs me in a different way. My wife needs me, and we need to have a solid marriage and a solid family if we're going to do anything for God. So Paul is wanting to see how they're doing, their personal life. He wants to know that they're free from demonic influence and that their message is pure. And he desires to see that firsthand. He says in verse 14, I am under no obligation to Greeks or to barbarians, both to the wise. I am under obligation both to Greeks and to barbarians, both to the wise and to the foolish. So in my part, I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. For I am not ashamed of the gospel. I am not ashamed of the gospel. Why? For it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. Did you ever feel shame when you're sitting in your office at work or at school or in your family gatherings and nobody believes? Don't you feel shame to say, I love Jesus? Did you know about Jesus? And the struggle we have is that when we feel shame and then we feel conviction to talk, if we still feel shame when we talk, our message is weak. Paul had no shame. No matter what the world said about him, and no matter what his Jewish buddies, his old Pharisee friends said about him, no matter what his family said about him, no matter what the citizens of Tarsus said about him, he was not ashamed of Jesus. He was not ashamed of the message. We cannot be ashamed of this message, for it is the power of God for everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. Both categories he's mentioned, the Jew and the Greek, were incredibly difficult people to preach a message of a crucified king. The Jew wanted a king that would destroy Rome. A Jew wanted to preserve the temple. He wanted to establish Moses in culture. They wanted to rule the world where they were. They didn't want to be under Rome. But God put them under Rome because it was not the administration of the Lord to just allow the gospel to be preached to the Jews. He wanted the gospel to the whole world. But he was going to use the Jews by raising up Jewish preachers and prophets, and even Jesus himself being a Jew, to reach the world. They were always supposed to extend the kingdom to the world. But they lost that understanding. They became secularized. They became prideful in who they were as Jews versus all the other nations. And then they had the other sin of dualism, of bringing in the other nations into their lifestyle, the other gods, to try to cater to the Gentile nations. But they were supposed to always be pure in their heart to Yahweh. And if they were, they would eventually come to see Jesus. And Paul knew this. And he eventually found Jesus. But the Greeks were the opposite. They were any kind of God you want, believe it. Our God does this for us. Our God has given us fertility. Our God has given us culture. Our God has given us the games. Our God has given us power to win at war. Our God has given us pleasure and sexual things. There's gods for everything, and the Greek just was open to all gods. And to say that there's an exclusive God, one, Jesus Christ, that is the way, the truth, and the life, that was amazing to say that a Greek would believe. And he did believe. And Greeks and Jews got saved in Rome, and they became one body, one new man in Jesus Christ. And he says in verse 17, "For in the gospel being preached is found the righteousness of God, and it is revealed from faith to faith. As it is written, the righteous man shall live by faith." The Lord wants you to know today that the gospel is the medicine to cure your sin-sick soul. The gospel is the antidote for your disease, for your plague. That in it, a righteousness is being revealed in Jesus Christ. A peace, a glory, a beauty, something that is going to raise you out of jail and being chained to sin and emancipate you to chase after the living God. A righteousness is being revealed in the preached message of Jesus Christ. This is our greatest need, to preach once again the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is the passion of my heart, to raise up preaching again in the public place, just like the Wesley brothers and Charles Finney and George Whitefield in earlier times in American history. They went to the public place and preached. We got to take back those public places. We've got to take back those streets. We've got to take back those institutions. And it will happen by preaching. Yeah, some of us may be thrown in jail. But at some point when God builds up this army, He's going to raise up an army of public preachers of the righteousness of God. We are not going to operate in the political side. We're going to operate in the transformed life side, one individual at a time. We're going to see God change a city manager, a mayor, a senator, even a president by the preaching of the gospel. And then that person does what he's called to do by God. See, we have the cure. We have it in vials all around us, ready to be pulled off the shelf and released into the lives and the hearts of those people that God's called us to reach, our fellow citizens, our neighbors, our family members. We are to believe in the gospel. We are to put money behind the gospel. We are to put our best workers into the preaching of the gospel. We don't take God can take anybody to preach the gospel. He can take somebody like me who's based